There we
Hello,
go.
hello, hello.
And we are live. Welcome, guys, to the first episode of Rock and Roll Religion Live. And a little bit different episode than we thought we were going to be having for you guys. Unfortunately, some scheduling conflicts came up last minute. So 70s will not be joining us. But we have all 32 flavors of Nickweiser here to help us discuss the modern era of my favorite band of all time and a metal legend, the immortal Judas Priest. So let's go ahead and get that up here. And
Yes.
God, I love that album. Like,
Mm,
just
mm, mm.
awesome. And how you doing today, Mister?
I'm doing good, man. I've had a crazy day. I've been hustling all over home, doing tons of very responsible home stuff,
Right, adulting.
and yes, being a very crazy adult. So I was just like, okay, I can't have too much of life, but I was trying to make sure I got most stuff done because I'm fitting in this 3 minutes was like a very tight squeeze. But I'm like, I have to talk about what originally supposed to be Saxon, but it preaches the trade off equally as glorious. So
Right,
I'm so glad we get to talk about this. Thank you for having me on, and I know this will be the first of many of these to come.
absolutely, man. And thanks for being here. Like, this is gonna like I've always wanted to do one of these live, and I've never had the opportunity. So it's a good chance to get a lot more in depth on a lot of this stuff and dig down more than the track by track breakdown I do on my pre-recorded stuff.
Mm-hmm,
So it's
mm-hmm.
a good chance to get somebody else's opinion and really back and forth ideas on a lot of this stuff. So we are going to be covering Judas Priest after Rob Halford's return to the band in 2005 after what was it, 12-year absence, 13 since 1992.
Yeah, that is because he rejoined in 2003. '03 is when he rejoined the
That's right.
band, and that
Came
was
back.
over the summer. Because then 2004 was when Priest did the Ozfest tour, and it was a big deal because it was Black Sabbath and Judas Priest.
You're right. You're right.
That's crazy. When you put those two on paper alone, that's like, whoa, that's a hell of a pairing.
Yeah, and let's go ahead and say hello to some of the chat here real quick. We got Dragon Master. How's it going, buddy? Me and him had a conversation the other day. Seems like a pretty good kid. And then we got Wookiee Supremacy here. How's it going,
Woo!
Wookiee? Been a minute, man. Good to have you here. And yes, my beard is absolutely huge. If I didn't cut it back all the time, I would probably be at like Gary levels of bearditude, but I just can't, like, it starts bothering me when I get it that long. So
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
we are but yeah, why don't you start us off with your first Priest record, apparently.
Okay, yeah, I'd be glad to go into my life with Priest. So my first records, let's see, when I first heard about Priest, it was because Rob Halford had rejoined the band, and there was just a lot of talk, a lot of press, a lot of buzz going around about it. It's like, hey, Priest is basically the acclaimed lineup of Priest is back together. So I'm like, okay, there's a lot of buzz about this band, and I gotta look into it. So of course I did, being teenage Nick, and everyone was going nuts about Rob Halford, and I saw photos of him, people calling him the metal god. I was blown away by the imagery alone, the biker imagery. I was just like, okay, I really dig the imagery going on around here. So then I looked into, of course, the very basic singles. I'm like, oh, this is good. But then, I went actually into the actual albums. Screaming for Vengeance. I was listening to Defenders of the Faith. I was listening to stuff like Point of Entry, even British Steel. And of course, like I heard Painkiller and I knew the rest was going to be history. I was just so freaking blown away by the Tipton Downing shredding duo. And then, of course, I got worried about them finally putting out an album. And that album went on to be called Angel of Retribution. And I was a junior in high school when it came out. I remember I left school early that day with a friend. We went to a Target to pick up this album. And he actually drove me. I wasn't even mobile then. 17-year-old Nick wasn't mobile, but I was able to convince all my guys, I need you to drive me to Target so I can get this Judas Priest album. And he did. And that was when they had for a very limited time. It was called Dual Disc. I don't know how well you remember formats, but for like not even a year, they were doing this format called Dual Disc. And I think I think I got the dual disc of this. It was like on one side was the CD, on the other side was like the DVD features and such.
Yep, I remember they did that. You're right. It only lasted like 6 months.
Seriously,
It was a very brief period of time, but like those things are actually pretty cool.
no, I got the idea. My guess is maybe they just got scratched up too easy on both sides. That maybe that's why it didn't last long. They had a good idea. Maybe their hearts were in the right place, but the idea obviously didn't take off for maybe those reasons. I should look in that. Maybe there's a video that exists of it on YouTube. But anyways, going back to this album, I was still a kid with the Walkman, and I remember putting this in my Walkman player, and just I remember when I first heard those opening notes of Judas Rising and White Bolts of Lightning. I was just like, dude, holy crap. It just, my mind was, I couldn't believe it. It was just like, holy crap, I'm hearing new Judas Priest in 2005. It just like, it sounded like just like classic Priest. And of course the songs went on. Revolution's more like the straight ahead rock and roll type of song. Same with a little bit of Worth Fighting For is like the power ballad. And then I love Demonizer's riff for riff. And then, of course, you had Hellrider. Like, I couldn't believe the twist. Hellrider's like going on the Raging Bull. Like, it really is. It's like going on there, and you take all these crazy twists and turns, leaps and bounds of adventure. I couldn't believe what I was hearing this album. If I had to like describe this album to someone, like whether they were getting to Judas Priest for the first time ever, or if they were coming back to it and they somehow weren't familiar, I'd say, imagine that this album is a greatest hits of songs they have yet to release. And I say that in the sense that there's a little bit of all the eras touched within this album. So it's like I said, it's like a greatest hits compilation of unreleased songs from all their eras. And there's even nods to those eras. Like, I think it's Hellrider where they say time to ram it down. We all know where that's from. So there's a lot of little nods to all that stuff. Megatron, yeah. I think that was in Hellrider as well. So you got a lot of cool nods to the past, and I felt like that made for a fun album. But yeah, I was listening to this album endlessly. I was showing all the cool metal kids, because at this time I was junior, and oddly the only cool metalhead kids were freshmen. So I went and showed them, but hey, you gotta listen to this album, guys. And they're like, whoa, Judas Priest is awesome. Well, I them only knew Iron Maiden. So, but once they heard Priest and they heard all that insanely sick shred of the Tipped and Down to it, of course, we can't forget about, the rhythm of Ian Hill and Scott Travis. And considering that this lineup here on this album is the Painkiller lineup, because obviously that's what they became highly known for, was this particular lineup.
And I think that sound too, like the Painkiller really changed the entire sonic quality of Judas Priest in a lot of ways, where they got a lot deeper and they used a lot more of that double bass that Scott Travis was famous for, and really started that deeper, thrashier sound that they became famous for. And it amazes me that like from this point, like really until the modern era, and they've just continued this pattern of not only still sounding like Judas Priest, but expanding that sound in new and interesting ways on every album, and yet make it all sound like the same band.
Yeah, no, and that just shows you once again, Priest, who's been at it for so long. Even though you had Al Watkins, then you had Rob Halford, then you had Tim Mullins, Halford back. And they've made enough changes, enough detours where you could still consider them, but they've never gone off the rails to the point where like this is unrecognizable. And I know some people have made some debates over the years about Turbo. I still count Turbo as a fucking Priest album.
I still dig a lot of the stuff on Turbo.
I do too.
It's not the best. It's not the best Priest stuff I've ever heard, but like there's still some really good riffs and stuff in there. Like Private Property is actually like I love the swagger in that song. Like it just has that attitude that I really dig from them. And even Turbo itself is not a bad record, or it's not a bad track.
It's not. Turbo. I enjoy me the Turbo lover, dude. I will not apologize. Seriously, that is a hill I will die on. Maybe some people that I know that statement gets used a lot lately, but for real, that is I love.
And I'm the same way with Point of Entry for the same reason. Like a lot of people like to shit on it, but I think that's really because of the albums that were before and after it. that it looks bad by comparison, but it's still a damn good record.
Yeah, and I could see why someone wouldn't like it maybe as much, but I always say, just because it's not as good doesn't automatically make it bad per
And I
se.
think this album gets a lot of stick for that as well, being the first album after the Ripper Owens era. A lot of the fans hadn't come back yet. A lot of them were like, oh, well, this is, the later Halford. And, I will say his voice does not sound as good on this record as it does on later ones. I think he was still kind of figuring out how his voice works now. And at this point, he's in his 50s.
Yeah.
So, it does change, and you do need to change with it. And I think on this record was really when he figured out how to fill out that bottom end of his voice. So you can get that like gravelly snarl that he can do on later records. And unfortunately on this record, like, he can hit those high notes, but it seems really inconsistent. Like, he can't do it all the time. So I think that kind of drags this down on some tracks. But I mean, even just Judas Rising and Hell Rider, you're talking 2 all-time classics.
Yeah, no, I agree. Those songs alone are classics, and I'm like I said, I'm even a fan of some of the lesser ones. Like, I never understood how Demonizer got the recognition I felt it deserved, and Deal with the Devil is a solid straight ahead rocker. And then there's, of course, the very, very, very controversial song, Loch Ness. Well, for me personally, I never hated it. I remember reading interviews at the time about it when the album came out, because I was reading all the typical magazines, Revolver, Hit Parade, or stuff like that. And they were talking about how this song was, Priest was talking about how this song was a tribute to Black Sabbath. And I could see why. It's definitely got the darkest riffage going on, probably the most evil Iommi-esque sound on the album, but it seemed like the running time is what killed it for a lot of people. And
it was a little on the longer side, and I think that really kind of leads to a lot of the hate on it. Like, I don't hate the song. Like, it's not obviously not my favorite Priest track, but it's not terrible. It's the end of this track. And Priest, we got to admit, has been famous for having really long, drawn out, boring outros for their albums, which is kind of an inverse, because they're also fucking famous for having the best intros of any metal band of all time. Like, their intro tracks are always absolutely lights out.
Because they're so good, dude. They're so good, man. They're so good.
I mean, what else would you have the Hellion and Electric Eye, Free Will Burning, Painkiller itself. Like Judas Rising, like their intro tracks are always just amazing, and yet their last track on the album, at least for the later editions, seems to be like their weak point.
I can see why it'd be for some their weak point. I still would. I'm going to defend. I feel like it's better than most of what came out after this album on the Nostradamus album, because one of my issues with Nostradamus, I didn't necessarily hate it, but it felt like there was not much I could necessarily remember. Like, it was just like, it was very forgettable for me, and I really want to like it. And the funny thing about liking the album, there was this story that went around. I don't know if the Sentinel remembers or if he even knows about it, but back in the day, when Nostradamus was the album that they were on tour for, there was this guy who became known around the world for listening to the album too much. He was on a listening streak, listening to it for like several months straight without skipping a day. He went several months, and I think he finally stopped, and then the streak broke, type of thing. Yeah, you could probably look up on DuckDuckGo or Google or Brave or Presearch. Judas Priest fan listens to Nostradamus too much, and it got wind to Priest. Priest did hear about him. They met the fan, and the fan was actually hoping that they would perform the entire thing live. So believe it or not, there was a major diehard out there of that album, which I don't understand, but I can definitely admire someone who stands by something that much, because for all we know, there could be someone out there who clings on to Turbo like that.
Hey, man, everybody's got their thing. And you know what? That's the awesome thing about a fandom. You'll always run into somebody who's a real fan of that, even though it wasn't their most popular stuff.
Oh yeah.
Like I've met some people in fan groups who are diehard rock and roll fans, and
Oh
like
yeah.
everyone, and I can see why. It's a good album, but it's like a very different sound for them.
Mm-hmm.
So your average Priest fan, myself included, it's like, oh, I don't mind it, but it's not like my thing.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Where, but no, I can definitely see whereas people would latch on to certain aspects of these records. And Nostradamus, I think the problem is it's a very big departure from Priest's normal style. And I think it should have been released as either a Glenn Tipton or Rob Halford solo project rather than a full Priest record, which is why I haven't put it up here.
Mm-hmm.
Because I don't really think it fits in the catalog. It's a very different record for them, and it doesn't really fit with their normal releases.
No, it does not, and it's a long one, dude. That's a double discer,
It's
and
like
it
an hour and a
is,
half.
yeah, it is loaded with material, and man, I'll tell you, maybe it's just it could be the traditional metal head fan in me speaking, but I like my albums, anywhere between 40 minutes to an hour past. It does take a little bit more convincing when it's gonna be an hour, but when I see that sweet 45 minute spot, like. I'm just like, ooh, that's perfect. And I think this one clocked in here, Angel of Retribution. I think it's clocked in right around 50 minutes, which if you take out Loch Ness, it's still actually a very short album. It's around 37 minutes. I mean, you don't have to fill up all the space on the record. Sometimes you just gotta make a statement, you get in, you make some riffs, and then you get the hell out. And Retribution did that, and Nostradamus, they wanted to stay in the big opera halls for a little bit too long, but they at least had a kick-ass tour that I knew about, and I'm still living in regret to this day of because it was them, Dio Era Sabbath, aka Heaven and Hell, Motorhead, and Testament, the Metal Masters tour in 2008. And dude, you want to talk about a time I'm kicking myself in my life for not going? That was the tour.
Right?
Priest, Dio,
I at least
Motorhead, Testament.
I at least had an excuse for that tour. I was in Afghanistan, so
Oh, you literally can't go.
yeah. But I mean, it's one of my biggest regrets that I never got to see that tour, and I've never gotten to see Motorhead live. But
Whoa.
I'm gonna, and I've also never seen Maiden. I'm fixing that this summer.
I've done
But
both of those, so I guess
it
we
was
even out.
it was one of those weird ones where like every time Maiden comes through, I have something more important going on that day,
Mm-hmm.
like a family thing or whatever. So I just can't.
Yeah,
I
know
just
that
can't go.
feel. Yeah.
But no, I think Nostradamus, and I just looked up Angel of Retribution. It looks like the total runtime was 52 minutes, so it's right in that 45-minute to an hour sweet spot, where it's not too long. And I think Nostradamus goes way longer than that. And
it does.
and especially for a metal album, like especially like unless it's a prog record like Dream Theater, where you're going to get that. It's going to be like an hour and a half long. It's good, like the songs are going to be longer and more involved. But for a brand like Priest, a lot of it is, anything you can do in under 5 minutes.
Oh yeah, no.
Like that's always been their thing. And even when they go a little bit beyond that, like we'll see later, they usually combine tracks into an intro and then the main track, and they really do a great job of it. And like, on the other end of that spectrum, you have bands like Fortress. Their first record is only 28 minutes.
Yeah, that's a great album.
It feels like they did everything they needed to do. It doesn't feel like it was lacking anything or that they were rushed. Mm-hmm. It's like they just came in, hit it. I don't think a single track on that album is over 4 minutes long. And they just came in, did what they needed to do, and got the hell out.
Yeah, and if one of those songs is over 4 minutes, it sure fooled me because, it clocks at 20 minutes, 8 songs. It has a statement, it makes it, and knows when to say, okay, guys, it's been good, but we're going to go out, well, no, the good is still good. And, oh, hey, Mark 2000Z, how you doing? He's got Testament, Dark Roots of Earth, Avatar, I see.
Nice.
Oh, nice. And Avatar. That's an underrated Testament album, by the way. I'm glad you had that because that's like, what's that album? Practice What You Preach on steroids is what I call Dark Roots of Earth. And of course, it's got the mighty Gene Hoglan on the drums on Dark Roots of Earth. I'm messing up my English here. sorry, Chad, and sorry, Pope. But no, great album, and I'm actually gonna go be seeing them in a few weeks when they come
Nice.
around with Exodus and Death Angel, but this time they got Dave Lombardo on the drums.
Really?
Yeah, Dave
That should be
Lombardo
interesting.
rejoined. Now, especially the last time he played was when they did The Gathering in 1999.
Yeah,
If you look at the
shit.
lineup they currently got now with Steve DiGiorgio on bass as well, it's 4/5 of the lineup from The Gathering that's together now. And he says Dark Roots is my favorite Testament. Dude, preach, man.
I
No pun
can certainly see
intended.
why.
No pun intended.
I can certainly see why. I mean, it's a certain, like you say, it's practice what you preach on steroids. Like it's everything that album did well, but cranked to 11. But no, I think the best way to describe it is like the difference between like, two movies that came out recently. Angel of Retribution is Dune. It's 2.5 hours. Like, it's on the longer side, but it doesn't feel it. Like it feels like you're still into it. You're still enjoying every minute of it. Like, and you want more. Whereas Nostradamus is the Batman, where it's overlong and could cut a lot of it out, and everyone can feel it.
Oh my god, dude! It's like if you're eating at Thanksgiving and you had a solid meal, and you're someone just like, hey, I still got a lot more turkey, like a lot more. You're like, dude, I'm full.
Yeah,
Just
like,
let it
no.
be.
It's like let me rest. No, but no, like that's the thing is like Nostradamus just feels like it's dragged out, and that it could have been slimmed down by quite a bit, and it
needed to go on a diet. To sum it
yeah,
up nicely, it needed to go on a diet.
it could trim a little bit here and there, and really that sound trimmed down is what came after it, which would be this album, Redeemer of Souls, which was the first newer Priest album I ever listened to. I forget when I first heard this one. It's probably 2015, 2016 when I first started really getting back into the scene. And then I heard I think the title track first, and I went and bought the album, and I wasn't disappointed.
No, it's a solid album.
Again, it has the side A bias that most Priest records do, but that's something you expect.
It's definitely got a stronger first half than it does a back half. And of course, you got another swinging intro as well. Overall, I'd say it's like a 7 out of 10 album. Like it's a pretty good album, and it wouldn't be one I would recommend to like someone looking to get into Priest. But it's this is for the diehards. This is for the diehards to say this song's made for the completists. To sum it up best, it's for the completists.
Yeah, and for a debut of a new band member in Richie Faulkner being his first record, he has some absolutely killer material on this one. Like the Halls of Valhalla, the solo from Dragonaut, he's absolutely murdering it. And I wish I had it here. Unfortunately, it's on the way back from my buddies right now. But I actually have his black and white Flying V. And that is my favorite guitar, and I absolutely fucking love playing it. Thing absolutely crushes.
I do like the production on this one. I will say that. And I know that's not the hugest compliment.
And people have complained about it, and I'm not really sure why.
No, I'm going to say that I disagree. I like how it sounds, and I want to also give a shout to Metalizer. I think that's a solid tune. I've always liked the weirder tracks, but I always felt Metalizer was definitely one of the songs I was like, man, I really dig this one.
Yeah. I mean, it's one of the tracks that I think most people didn't really get because like the tracks before it are just kind of so a lot of people kind of dipped out of the album early. And then you get to, Metalizer, and even Crossfire has its moments.
Ooh, Mark's comment says Redeemer Souls is on par with Angel of Retribution. Halls of Valhalla is an epic song. I hear that. Rob shines on that song. Lows Highs, he even throws in some growls. Oh crap, you're right. He did. I forgot that he did.
That crescendo of Halls of Valhalla where he goes all the way down to the basement and then fucking goes all the way up as high as he can is just magical. That is just one of those, like, I played that for a friend of mine and his jaw just about hit the floor. because he was just like, how old is this guy? He's like, well, at this point, like 64.
Now, the sets that they were doing for this, they did do really cool set lists for this too, because this is when they realized, okay, we can't just keep playing the same songs live. And this is when they'll start to bring back some odd cuts. Like they are bringing back some rock and roll material during the tours for this album. So the tours did well for this. And God, I think they did one tour, I think is BLS Open, and then they did another tour. I'm trying to refresh my brain here. Oi. Forgive me here. It's just not hitting me. They did at least one BLS Open. I think that was the fall 2014 tour, because out here in Illinois, they played a venue right outside the border of Illinois in a town called Indiana. It was like this weird casino. Yeah, right. It was like this weird like casino type of venue that apparently had like shows there, which I'm like, hold up, what's Priest not doing playing at the Aragon Ballroom or freaking Allstate Arena or the Allstate Theaters, which is what they normally play in there. Actually, they also did do
they apparently intentionally go with smaller venues because they could play TD Garden in Boston, but instead this tour, but they're coming around on now, they're playing the Saugus Arena and the Palladium, which are both actually no, sorry, they were going to play the Palladium last time. They are playing Saugus Arena this time. So they're intentionally choosing like 2,000, 3,000 persons arenas rather than the bigger venues. I don't know whether they don't think they're going to draw that many people, which that doesn't sound right to me, or whether they like playing small venues.
Yeah, who knows what the intentions were for Redeemer of Souls. I mean, at this point, let's not forget too a little important thing that we missed between Nostradamus and Redeemer was the fact that KK was supposed to have retired. To be fair, though, the whole entire band was supposed to be. They had done like a what was not so final tour, and then KK is like, well, all right, well, I'm gonna go retirement anyways, and that's what led to Richie Faulkner joining the band. And no disrespect to any guy, because I love them both. KK's great.
They're both fantastic.
Yeah,
I hate the people who are like, oh, well, this one or this one's the real Priest. It's like, dude, they were both Priest in their own eras, and they do sound different. They're not trying to step on each other's toes. But Dragon Master brought up an interesting question because he's on the younger side. So he was a very, very young kid when a lot of this happened. So the beginning of this period in like 2005 was after they stopped printing albums on vinyl by a fair bit, and then somewhere in the late 2000s or early 2010s, I want to say they started doing it again.
I'm gonna say late 2000s because there's this one band I listened to, like a stoner doom band called High on Fire.
Oh yeah, they're great.
They had an album that came out in 2007 called Death Is This Communion, and I remember their singer, who also plays bass, Matt Pike, used to come from a doom metal band called Sleep, and Matt Pike was just like, I can't believe that we got kids buying our album on vinyl, which I didn't buy on vinyl. I bought it on CD, so I didn't know how to comprehend kids buying our album on vinyl. And when I heard Matt Pike say those words, and those were along the lines of, those weren't exact words, but it just was like, holy crap, vinyl's back. No one told me. And then I looked into it a little, and I'm like, there was a little vinyl run for that album. I'm like, oh. This is interesting.
Back then, a lot of it was very, very small runs. Like you could those are collector's items. Like they would only make a few thousand of them. But nowadays, you even on Amazon or whatever, you can get a vinyl copy of whatever record comes out now, which I'll demonstrate in a minute. But no, to answer your question, they stopped for a period and now it's coming back because people really realized that it's a really different experience listening to the whole record on vinyl and actually having like the large scale art in your hand and all that than it is just throwing it on Spotify while you're at the gym or whatever, and just playing it either track by track or stuff like that. So yes, it has come back because by popular demand, people wanted it.
So bands
started doing it again.
They started doing it, and now it's crazy because now Now the factories that print the vinyl, now they make the wax for it. Now they're like overloaded. Now they got all of them coming out left and right, and that the pressing plants had to put delays because a lot of bands, when they put out their CD, they want to have the vinyl out at the same time, which is logical as far as marketing goes. But nowadays, everyone is just so on the hunt for vinyl. And I remember it reminds me of an interview I read with Alice Cooper, and they were talking about the comeback of vinyl. And they asked Coop, like, hey, what made you think that? What's making people nowadays buy vinyl? He said, well, the kids just got sick of buying air, so they want to actually buy the albums. And dude, I live by a legendary Chicago record store a few years ago. And I remember I was in the CD section for metal. I'll say it, and I still would to this day. And I just remember seeing all the kids who were younger than me, who was listening to the same cool shit that I was. They were all looking at vinyl, man. And I nodded to them like, hell yeah, dude, type of thing. And maybe if I had gotten into vinyl first, I would love it even more. But when I started with CDs and I have a literal few thousand CDs, I can't buy everything again on vinyl, but I still have about 100 albums on, maybe 200 on vinyl. And the art's always beautiful. Look, it's like you own like a painting or a drawing.
Oh yeah, I mean it's a totally different animal, and like I only own one vinyl record right now because I just started collecting them, and but I'm going to start a small collection of albums that really mean something to me, like either an album that was really important in terms of my appreciation of the genre or that band, or like but something that's that's special to me for me to collect it in vinyl. And I actually don't have a record player. I need to remedy that. My old one broke. Because I still have my dad's old record player from back in the 70s, and I had that running for a long time, but unfortunately, now that the new stuff is coming out, I don't have it. But yeah, that is a revival of an older art form because it is a lot more desirable in a lot of ways. Like it's a completely different art style, and there's something to be said for like the bands that created albums back in the 80s that were that you get a more complete album out of it as a result, I think, because you can't skip tracks and stuff like that, so you don't have the later tendency to just shove 12 tracks onto a record and call it an album. They actually have to flow together and form like a part of a larger whole.
Yeah, it's all part of the experience. You got the giant disc spinning, and the music's just like all massive sounding. You got that giant lyric sheet with the liner notes and the album credits and the thanks list. And obviously, you can read better. I'm okay with vision, but I know a lot of people have vision issues. So I can imagine reading vinyl so much better than reading on a CD.
Yeah, I mean, because you're talking something that's like the cover itself is 12 by 12, not not a 4-inch square that you're sitting there trying to read. But no, that's a very good direction for the genre to go in, I think, which ties perfectly into my love for like the entire genre seems to be going back to the glory days of the 1980s in both the sound and the methodology and all of it. It seems to be reverting back to that, and I could not be happier about that fact, because that's when the genre was at its best. Was in the mid to late 80s. And
that's when you had that like second wave of heavy metal come, which they would call at the time the new wave of British heavy metal. And that's when you had like the Saxons of the world show up, and you had Dio doing obviously Mob Rules. You had Iron Maiden putting out Killers. So like everyone was just ready to start firing on all cylinders. If you're a traditional heavy metal band, that second wave, or the new wave, whatever you want to call it, that wave was on fire, man.
That early 80s, like from like 80 to 82 or even 84, there were some absolutely killer records coming out there, no pun intended. But just every band from Accept to Judas Priest to Maiden to Saxon was just murdering it. And I mean, I think Saxon's big break was when they did the Denim and Leather tour opening for Motorhead on what is the most legendary live tour of all time, or the live album anyway, No Sleep Till Hammersmith.
Yes.
Saxon was the opener for that tour.
God.
I can only imagine
now?
that tour. Yep.
Oh, it would be huge if it happened now. My brain would probably explode.
I mean, like it's like one of my mom's friends. His first tour, or his first show, was Maiden opening for Judas Priest in 1982.
Oh,
so you have Maiden on Number of the Beast opening for Priest with Screaming for Vengeance. That is just an absolutely ridiculous lineup.
Seriously, some heads are gonna roll when you say these bombshells. Like that's
right?
just woo. I'm getting excited hearing.
It's like I can't even imagine what that's like. And I'm glad to see that sound is coming back in another acronym of the NWO THM movement. I mean, you got bands like Enforcer, Ambush, Fortress is a perfect example. All of these guys are coming back with that sound, and yet not making it sound like a ripoff of the older bands. Like they're kind of taking it and making it their own. Riot City is another great one that, based on their album art, is heavily influenced by Priest. And that's something I do want to hit on, especially when we get to this last record here. Actually, let's bring that up. Is their newest release, Firepower.
Woo!
When it comes to album art, Judas Priest has to be one of the all-time champs.
I always
consistently.
They're consistent with the art. They're consistent with making a complete package deal. And I love that this cover looks like the reverse of Screaming. It looks like a.
You're absolutely right, especially with the streaks going in the same direction too.
Yeah.
It literally looks like Titanicus here is firing up at the Hellion, which I really, really like it.
Oh, Mark 2000s. I got some of those bands through. Right? Yeah, dude.
Yeah,
I mean,
he was the one who got me into Enforcer.
That's what's cool. It's cool that not only do we got these new bands coming out, but they're good. Like they're good, and you want to listen. It makes it so much easier to talk about new music, to get excited about.
Oh yeah, and that's
get on tour so I can see you now. Damn it!
And that's one of the reasons I've covered Ambush, their new album. I've covered Fortress's first record on my individual album reviews. You guys go check those out on your own time. Because I really want to highlight those bands, because these guys are young. They're just coming out now, and they really could use as much exposure as they can get. And I really think that's the future of the genre, is these guys, because these guys are in their mid-20s, and they're playing music that was around from before they were born, before we were born, in a lot of ways. And I think that's worth showcasing. And this album is easily the best record that Priest has done since 1990. Easily.
And it's even, dare I say, better than a lot of their output from the 70s and 80s even too. Seriously, this is in the upper echelon of the Judas Priest like rankings on this album. Like I remember when this came out, because this was the 2018 tour with Saxon as the opener. And that was actually, I remember, because I was mad that they didn't have a Chicago date, and Saxon actually did their own off show in Chicago first, because I don't know why they didn't do a Chicago date. They always do. I don't know if maybe the tour routing just didn't fit. I don't know. So, I always try to play fair, because not everything can always happen. But I was happy that Saxon was able to squeeze in a Chicago date. And that was actually my first time ever seeing Saxon live. And so that was a cool experience getting to see them. And I was just like, and I know Priest came around later. And of course, that was the time I couldn't go. But I remember watching videos of the set list, and it was cool to see them play so many songs off this album. And I'm going to share Mark's sentiments, saying Evil Never Dies is one of my favorite songs on the album. But I will say, though, that some of the shredding on, it's either Rising from Ruins or Flamethrower, that's got some of the wildest shredding going on.
Oh man, I mean, this album is, just straight, like, this is the first album since Painkiller that I can honestly say is just all killer, no filler, just perfect record. and it's the fourth time they've done that. I'd put Stained Class up there, Screaming for Vengeance, obviously, Defenders of the Faith, almost, but Painkiller and Firepower, absolutely. Even Sea of Red, I'm a big fan of.
I actually dig it as well. Actually,
because it takes a while to get there, and I really dig when it does, because it just builds to that crescendo that just perfectly closes out the album. Although I would say my personal favorite is the pairing of Guardians and Rising from Ruins.
Rising from Ruins, yeah, that is a great 1-2 punch, because it really, like, Guardians just kind of like calms you down, and then it just comes back all guns blazing. Once again, no pun intended. We're just doing all these Priest puns, and it's just happening. Like, damn it, Priest. we're not trying to be funny here, but no, it really does come back all guns blazing for Rising from Ruins. It really does.
Mark pretty much hits my exact order of Priest albums right here. Although I would put Firepower right behind Painkiller, and I would replace Stained Class with Sin After Sin, actually, because I have some really, really like that album has some all-time classics like Dissident Aggressor, Starbreaker, which I named my guitar after, and Call the Priest. Let Us Pray. Like, I absolutely love all of those tracks, and even Race with the Devil, I have a lot of fun with.
Well, he's got another one here. He says Defenders would be my favorite. Would be if it didn't have the last two songs, which is just one. So it's not.
Defenders has my favorite Priest track of all time in Rock Hard Ride Free, but
I'm a big Sentinel guy, man.
I can't deny either one of them. They actually played that on the tour in 2019, opposite this album. And I love seeing them live because they can still perform those songs perfectly, even 40 years later. Which it takes a special kind of band to still be at this level at this point in their career. I mean, they had to cancel it, but they're on their 50th anniversary tour. Technically, their 51st.
Yeah.
The fact that they're still at this level is just absolutely ridiculous, and puts them in my category of the greatest heavy metal band to ever exist. I mean, because anybody that was ever better than them, they're all gone.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, R.I.P. Lemmy, and I would have to think about the greatest, my favorite, because for me, like, as far as Sabbath goes, my era of Sabbath is the Dio era. Like, I like a lot of the Ozzy stuff. I actually do. I genuinely do. Not just because everyone who likes it's popular likes it, but there's a lot of great stuff. Masters of Reality is a great album.
The first four records, I mean, hell, even five really are goddamn flawless.
Oh yeah, they're great albums. But and maybe it's because when I was getting into Priest, I was also getting into the Heaven and Hell, Mob Rules, that whole era of Sabbath, and I just latched onto it. I thought the riffing was a bit more eviler. Obviously, Dio has his way of doing singing, and I thought Vinny Appice was a perfect fit for what they were doing on the Skins. I felt like I will actually argue that Heaven and Hell album, which is a Sabbath album, by the way, it's not a Heaven and Hell. Fuck you, Sharon Osbourne. It's a Black Sabbath. It was far better than Ozzy's Reunion album.
Oh yeah, by far.
So good.
And I love the fact that the first thing, like, it's a very different album for Black Sabbath sonically. And it's a very clear demarcation line between the Ozzy era and the Dio era, where most of Ozzy's stuff was kind of on the slower side, a little more doom and stoner metal.
Oh yeah. It spawned the whole genre of that too.
And then the first track you hear from Dio era Sabbath is fucking Neon Nights. Which just up-paced, upbeat, epic freaking track, and it's absolutely fucking amazing.
Yeah, see, that's the stuff that just sung to me.
That hallmark.
Yeah, it just that stuff with there's just something about that epic feel that reached out to me a little bit more than the stoner vibe.
And that's just Ronnie James Dio in general. Just the energy and that feel he puts into into everything he does, and it's one of the reasons he's been done well with every band he's been in, from Rainbow to Dio to Sabbath. It's just he's just a legend. Like there's no way of getting around it.
So okay, I see a lot of comments about Dave Mustaine. So when I met Nerdrotic in person at the Vegas meetup a few months ago, he was telling me, I can't remember if he said if he was by a bus or something, but he saw Dave Mustaine outside, and he said that Dave Mustaine told him to fuck off. So I laughed about that. I laughed so hard. I'm like, God, Nerdrock, I told him to fuck off by Dave Mustaine.
I mean, I feel like that's a badge of honor because I feel like Dave has told everyone to fuck off at some point. Apparently he's gotten a lot calmer and a lot nicer in his old age, but especially back in the day, the amount of fucking drugs that were coursing through that man's system.
I almost wanted him to just tell me to fuck off, though, because like in the 80s, when he was on drugs, the music he was creating during the era of the drugs and all that stuff, he was a riff-making machine.
Up into 1990 with, I don't know what the fuck was coursing through their veins when they wrote Rust in Peace, but holy shit.
Marty Friedman, man.
Every track on that record, it was just solid gold.
And
it's just a nonstop rip, just even right out the gate, just bang, fucking Holy Wars, fucking Hangar 18, Tornado of Souls, Symphony of Destruction, just like, holy shit. Like, what the fuck is wrong with you? You guys, you're just putting all of this on the one record.
Oh, man.
And they were just crushing it. And Priest did the same thing in that era with Painkiller. And like a lot of records, like, you know, it'll kind of slow down towards the middle point, almost because like they record it like a live performance where you have to slow down at some point, give the drummer a chance to rest mostly. And also just kind of bring it, like, you know, keep that level, you know, that energy level going. And then you have albums like Painkiller where, nope, it's just foot to the fucking floor from minute one. We're just going for it. And it's going to be 45 minutes of pure mayhem. And I absolutely adore it for that. And Firepower is kind of in the former camp where the middle part, they kind of slow the tempo down a little bit. But that being said, it still crushes because it has that tone, that guitar tone from top to bottom in this album is just bone crushing.
No, I agree.
And that's pure Richie Faulkner.
Faulkner was a great addition, and the fact is he feels like Priest. Like when we listen to it, like if you weren't told KK Downing like left the band, I'm sure like a guitar player could tell you very, very subtle influences. Sure, I'm not going to debate that. I'm not a guitar player, but he as far as the twin leads of him and Tipton, which thankfully Tipton played on this album before his Parkinson's kicked in, you could have swore it was just a classic, historical lineup of Priest.
And from what I've heard, their new record that I believe are working on.
They are.
I believe they are writing it, and I believe Tipton is writing for it. I just don't know if he's recording or if it's going to be Faulkner and Eddie Sneap.
I know he's writing. I know Tipton is writing for the album. I hope he does get to record. Because it's nice that he shows up for whenever the local dates coming around. He does show up and play with them, which is great to see. So
apparently he does that whenever he's having a good night and actually feels up to it, which I love the fact that he has that dedication, that he's out there. He has the perfect excuse to bow out of that band and just be like, hey guys, it's been a great career. But I mean, there's a reason he's the man. Like, he's the one reason I picked up a guitar and started playing.
That's a hell of a reason, man.
So I mean, he's just an all-time shred monster, and I think Richie Faulkner is a perfect successor to him for that reason. And you know what? You can't. I like the fact that, like you say, they are very different players, and like we said with Redeemer, you can't replace KK Downing, and Richie didn't try.
No, he did.
He brought his Faulkner. Yeah, he brought his own style into the band in a way that fits very well. And he had that Flying V made because he was part of Judas Priest. Like, he's normally a Les Paul player. And he was like, well, if I'm going to be part of Judas Priest, something's got to have a V. Like, that's like, they're one of the bands that made the Flying V famous.
Yes.
Especially KK. So he got that Gibson V made, and holy shit, is that thing awesome. But that's the dedication he had to that band, and that he was great at coming into the band and adapting his own sound to fit it.
Yeah, no, I wholeheartedly agree. No, Faulkner, it's like he never left. I mean, sorry, it's like he was always there, is what I meant to say. And he blends in nicely. And Travis delivers again. I mean, he's one of those drummers I feel he doesn't really
he's just a machine.
He's a machine, but he doesn't get the coverage that he should. Like, and obviously there's a lot of great drummers who are like virtuosos.
And even with his previous band, Racer X, they're fucking fantastic too.
Dude, Street Lethal is the jam of fucking jams. Woo!
It's when you've just done an 8-ball of coke in the bathroom and really just want to go somewhere fast. Racer X is just like that, and in general, they're fantastic. And then when he I think he brought that sound into Priest, where you see them get a lot faster and more aggressive on Painkiller, and they've stuck with it ever since. Like even Jugulator and the Ripper Owens stuff, I think you can hear a lot of that on there.
Oh, dude, they're basically just doing a continuance of what they were doing with Painkiller, but with Ripper Owens. That's all of those albums were. They I mean, at least you could say not the latter, but the former. God, my brain is freaking plugging out on me. God, not Jugulator, but
shit. What is Demolition?
Yeah, sorry, Demolition. Yeah, so
it took me a minute because those are the albums you can't find. In fact, I'm still trying to find actual copies of those records because you can't buy them.
Dude, no, they're hard. I actually finally scored recently a Black Sabbath album of Jugular. He says Jugular. So back to the subject of the Heaven and Hell album that they did. It was a Black Sabbath album, but I have to say it for clarity purposes. It was $35 in the shrink wrap on eBay.
Holy shit!
And yeah, and I remember what a guy I knew. He's very resourceful. He's been able to get a bunch of old metal albums and find them online. I remember he found one from Ex Hoarder, and they had their album Slaughtered and Vac, and I hope they finally reissue. They need to already. Ex Hoarder is the band that predated Pantera, because then when they were Glamterra, and then they discovered Ex Hoarder, and they're like, hey, we should do what these guys are doing. And then they did the sound that made them go off into what they became on the Cowboys and throughout era. But yeah, where they got their modern sound is because of Ex Hoarder. But point is that album was hard to find, and he had spent like $70 or $80 for a copy of that album. And it's the rarity of metal albums is amazing out there. And to answer Courtney's question, talk about Matt Pike. I was into Sleep. I like High on Fire more. A lot of my friends disagree with me. They like Sleep
I'll be right
more.
Back.
No, that's fine. I can carry this. With Sleep, I saw them in Maryland Death Fest in 2013, and I remember how heavy that guitar was. And if I remember correctly too, Sleep played 20 minutes over their set of when they were supposed to start, which, people at the time, no one was complaining because, more time is more time. And they had the audience still there from beginning to end. But I remember it kind of crept up into the time that Venom would be playing later on that night, because this was the 2013 edition of MDF, and that was the final night. And Sleep was one of the last acts, and Venom was the headliner. And when Venom were already late because of bands already cutting into their time, but then Venom went on even later because of that time. So Venom and Kronos ate up even more time, and then the plug got pulled on Venom while they were playing. And then a straight up riot broke out. I remember glass being thrown. I just remember thinking, bro, I got to juke it out of here because this shit is crazy. And yeah, there's a lot of controversy around that weekend at the time. But it seems like the MDF guys and Venom have worked it out since, because Kronos and the boys did get re-invited to play on the 2016 edition of said festival. and it's all things coming up Millhouse since then. So glad Venom and them worked out. But I want to look more into Venom Inc. because Venom Inc. had 2/3 of the original lineup of Venom. You had Abattoir and you had Jugulator, and sorry, not Jugulator. Great, damn it, my brain's frying out. But yeah, Venom Inc. is 2/3 of the original Venom lineup, and the funny part is Kronos didn't even come up with the name. There he is. He's back. I was just
Yes,
talking
sir.
about Story with Sleep and how they played over the time and it cut into Venom's time. And Venom was already late to begin with. And then the Venom had the plug pulled on them. And then a riot broke out outside.
Why am I not surprised that Venom completely fucked up the show? I don't get me wrong. I love early Venom, but they when it comes to their live shows, I've heard they're an absolute train wreck. They can't get on stage on time.
No, Kronos
they
is
run
the
over
prima
all the
donna.
time.
Kronos is a prima donna, but the other two guys from his original lineup formed another band called Venom Inc. And so he had 2/3 of the original lineup of Venom doing Venom Inc. And they've put out one album since then. And yeah, they got
actually that was last year. No, it wasn't Venom Inc. That was actually Venom.
Venom came around recently, but Venom Inc. they put their album in 2017. 2017, Venom Inc. came out, and they had the album called Ave. It's a pretty good album. There's some slower songs that kind of don't cut for me, but boy, the songs I love in that album, I feel like if they trimmed it down a few songs, it would be a great album. It's an album that I would give a 7 out of 10, but I would definitely give it an 8 or maybe even 8.5 if they trimmed it down a bit.
And yes, I am. We were both big fans of Slayer. Me, I like a lot of their more black metal stuff, their early stuff, like Black Magic and that sound. And obviously, their classics like Angel of Death, shit like that. War Ensemble. My personal favorite, probably of all time, Chemical Warfare.
Ooh, good one.
Because
I like this Chemical Warfare.
I mean, they've done their fair share of Priest covers too. Not that I like the song, but they did Dissonant Aggressor
on South of Heaven, which I love that album. That's probably
one of the worst covers I've ever heard.
It's one of my rare moments from early Slayer that I did not like at all. And trust me, I worship the ground that Slayer walked on with those first 5 albums. And I did catch them live though till they called it a day, because I saw their last tour, and in Chicago, their last day was at Riot Fest 2019, and Slayer absolutely annihilated that field. And what was cool was because even though for the last 10 years before Slayer called it a day, Tom Araya stopped headbanging because he had surgery on his neck. So his doctor's right, bro, you gotta stop with the headbanging. But here's what's cool though, even though it made him a lot more like of a statue on stage, his voice started sounding a lot like he did in his early days, and he could start doing his high pitched Angel of Death scream again. I was just like, are you fucking kidding me? He's doing that again? Hell yeah! So, and Gary Holt from Exodus was a great fill-in for Jeff Hanneman. Shout out to Gary Holt and Exodus, man. Bonded by blood.
When you have to step in for a guy like Jeff Hanneman, it's one of those things that, holy shit, I really got to bring it. And he did. I saw them, I think 2018, when they were headlining with Amon Amarth, touring with them.
And second leg tour. I remember that.
And it takes a lot to blow Amon Amarth off the stage. But Slayer managed it.
It's fucking Slayer.
Yeah, not to get into the meme, but fucking Slayer. But it's a meme for a reason. It's mostly true. And these guys were great showmen. And I mean, to bring it back to Priest, that's the amazing thing about Priest and their longevity is they lasted 10 years longer, actually 20 years longer, pretty much, than Slayer has existed.
Yeah.
I mean, Slayer started out playing a lot of Priest and Maiden covers.
Yes.
In bars and shit, from Sad Wings of Destiny and Sin After Sin and that era. And then 10 years later, well, actually almost 10 years after Priest formed, you have Slayer's first couple records come out, and the real beginning of the thrash movement in America, and then they're gone now, and Priest is still here and still recording.
And yeah, once again, it's really weird to think that. I'm glad you brought that up because I need to process the thought because, yeah, Slayer are done. And we obviously know there's no more like certain other bands, they come and go. And yet here we are. We're back at square one, even though Sabbath is pretty much done for as well.
I think they've officially said they're toast. Like they're not going to come back.
Yeah. And
which I don't blame them. They've been around since 1969.
Now, would I like it if Iommi said, "Hey, man, maybe I should get something going with Tony Martin"? I'd check it out. I would. I'd check it out.
I feel like that era of Sabbath is probably the most underplayed and underrated because Tony Martin's got a hell of a voice.
Oh, such a good voice.
And he's got some classics on that, like The Shining, a couple of other tracks from that period. Mm-hmm. It's just like, ooh. Yeah.
We're going to do a Sabbath panel one day.
Absolutely.
They'll have to take like 5 hours. We'll have to do EFAP of it, Mahler style.
Right. It's like, oh, we're going to do a thing on Black Sabbath. All right. How many weeks do we want to dedicate to this?
Maybe we'll have to figure something. We'll have to figure something out for that one. But no, seriously, that actually sounds like a very fun idea. I would love to do that. But bring it back to Priest. This album, it riffed hard. The choruses are super memorable. It's very, very Priesty. Like this, it's like when you have a good pizza and they just stuff it with more of the great ingredients that make it a great pizza. And that's basically what Priest is. And Priest have a formula down. They do. And there's a few, tweaks that they make. It's kind of like when you're taking a nice car, you're souping it up a bit, but it's still the car and you love. There's just a few tweaks and adjustments. There's nothing where it goes so far out of the range. You're like, whoa, is this Celtic Frost putting out Cold Lake? Where it's like such a radical departure. Like, I feel like Priest has been a band, even with Turbo, that they have still stayed true to what makes Judas Priest.
And this album is basically a distilled essence of everything they do well.
Mm-hmm.
And they've just cranked it up to 11. The riffs from fucking Andy, especially live from Andy and Richie, are just phenomenal. And people like to shit on Andy Sneap because he's the producer. He's just he's a fucking fantastic guitarist, and everyone knows it.
His previous band was kick-ass. Sabat, oh my god, he needs to get Sabat. He needs to reform Sabat. Have them be the opener on the Priest tour. Just have a little bit of like an extra 15 minutes of the intermission.
I don't know, man.
So he can rest a little.
Being a guitar player, that's a rough ass to do a 3-hour fucking session.
Hey,
on stage, that's rough.
But here's what you do then. Do it like what Gary Holt did. He had Exodus and then Suicidal Tendencies play and then play with Slayer later on. So have a band in between there and then the problem solved. See? There you go, Andy. I solved your problem. Sabat could be the opener. Get a little bit of a mid-sized band to play after so you could get that rest break, and then you could do Judas Priest.
Hell yeah. But no, I mean, and I was really disappointed when they briefly took Andy off the bill for this tour coming up. Yeah. And people were pissed because they're like, oh yeah, we're going to tour. Well, not only that, Judas Priest goes, oh yeah, we're going to tour as a 4-piece. Fucking excuse me? What? like you guys are famous for that twin guitar attack. You invented that sound, and you're going to tour with one guitarist? Are you dumb?
I don't know. Maybe they didn't have the Wheaties that morning. I'm going to give Priest a benefit of the doubt and just say that their heads went out all there.
That's smacked of management trying to make some dumb decisions and everyone just not having it. Because that decision lasted all of like 48 hours, and then they were right back to having Andy on the tour again.
Andy Sneap's response was shock. He's like, well, I'm not happy with this decision, which I'm glad he was honest about it. Yeah. He's like, but I'm still going to be involved with the making of the album. I'm just like,
no, he was a complete gentleman about the whole thing, where he's like, hey, I'm not excited about what they decided to do, but I'm looking forward to working with them again. And that's exactly the response he should have had.
Mm-hmm.
And like, especially being, I don't want to say a replacement, but that's kind of what he is, for Glenn. It's like just kind of a last minute addition. Although that was last tour. Last tour, he was the guy that they had to get because Glenn couldn't do it. This time, he's a member of the band. Like, he's toured with them for 3 years at this point. He's played on one of their albums. He's a full-fledged member of the band at this point.
Yeah, no, he needs to just listen, guys. KK, he's done, and on top of it, he's got a thing going on with a thing called KK's Priest. Maybe that
which is another band that sounds remarkably like this one, and yet they actually have a lot more of the 70s Priest sound.
Oh, they do. No, they do.
And that is a very good thing.
Yeah, it's a beautiful thing. Enjoy that. We have 2 bands to enjoy. That's the way I see it. That we got the more the merrier. So,
and a lot of Priest fans
we'll get a tour of that. I would go see that.
And a lot of Priest fans are like, "Oh, well, KK needs to come back." KK has said things about the band
a lot
that cannot be taken back.
Nope, he is beyond repaired with the damage, unfortunately.
And that's the unfortunate part is I really feel sad that he felt the need to get personal with it, because it wasn't a personal thing. He was supposed to retire. Everyone knew that. Everyone was fine with that, and they went to get a replacement. And then I think KK went back on that idea, and they went, oh, okay, well, we already found a guy, and we really like him, so we're not going to give you your job back.
Yeah, I mean, I get it. Where if you're a really old school fan, you're obviously coming from a bit of a more emotional place.
I love him too.
Yeah, I do too. I get where it comes from, but however, this guy has already given so much time and effort. He's paid his dues. You can't just be like, all right, man, we gotta kick you out. I mean, I guess they could do that, but it would just be a really
even when
it would be a bigger dick move if they did
even when he left in 2011. And he's just like, oh, he made the decision to retire. They went out and got somebody else. And then like he came and then he comes back like probably 6 months later and asks for his job back. It's like, no, dude, you left.
Yeah, bro.
It's like that's and we really like this guy. He works really well, and we're going to continue on with him. It's either that or end the band. So like I feel like KK did it to himself in a lot of ways and then got really butthurt about it.
He shot himself in the foot, and it's a very conflicting thing. I get it. He thought he was done, and every now and then, sometimes it takes for you to be away from something in order to realize how much you miss it. Time away makes the heart grow fonder, but those guys weren't ready to cool down either. Like, well, we want to keep going. So
yeah, they had more they wanted to do.
Yeah, and they had a message still to put out, and they still wanted to be Judas Priest, and they were many years ahead of the game.
And this is where I break from Razor Fist's assessment of these. This is basically a Judas Priest tribute band, and I don't agree. I think they still have the core of Judas Priest right there. I mean, you still have Glenn on the writing team, you still have Rob, and you still have Ian, and Scott's been part of the band for 25 years at this point, damn near. And even Richie has been part of the band for 8 years. Like, this is not a new lineup.
I could see why he said it, because, I mean, on a technicality, he's not wrong. Because
it's not the original lineup. That's true.
It's like, obviously, KK, Glenn Tipton, Ian Hill, Al Watkins, and, God, what's that drummer who got in big, deep shit?
Les Binks. Dave something.
Dave Gibbons. No, not Dave Gibbons.
Dave Hammond. No, not
Dave.
him.
Yeah, thank you.
Dave Hammond? Okay.
So we got those. That was obviously the original lineup, and obviously Halford has been dominant with Priest. And I get it. Like, too, there's also the songwriting standpoint. KK and Glenn were basically the main writers, and you already got KK who's gone, and Glenn is still writing. And yes, it would be ideal to have him on stage. It seems like he will always have a spot there, because he's not, obviously this is a very big situation that's literally out of his control, unlike retirement. So I think that's why they've showed more leniency towards Glenn, is because, well, a disease is not something you just plan for. Retirement, you can just say, hey, I'm done.
Yeah, it's I've had a good career. I want to focus on other things. I'm done. Whereas he's still got more he wants to do. He just can't.
Yeah, he literally can't.
So I think a lot of times he has to kind of do what he wants to do through Richie. And that must get so frustrating as a musician, in that you know what you want to do, but you can't play it, but somebody else can play it for you.
Oh yeah, dude.
Especially when you're of that caliber Glenn Tipton is. Where for 40 years you were just the shred master.
The struggle is real, and I know that statement gets tossed around very easily, but I feel like if anyone deserves to use that statement, it is them.
Yeah,
for real.
It would be like Robin Williams being Robin Williams and then being trapped in a wheelchair. Or like, you know, have ALS or something like Stephen Hawking had, where you have so much talent you just can't express it.
Dude,
it would be pure torture. But yeah, Courtney brings up yet another band that I am a big fan of is Bathory, where their first 3 or 4 records I'm a big fan of, and even then, like, their later stuff I like less because it's more on the Viking metal side, but I still appreciate it a lot. I just wish that Corthon could admit that he wasn't the one who came up with black metal.
Right? It's like, dude, we know you didn't come up with it, and honestly, we don't care because we like you for what you contributed. Just admit it, all right. And that dude, you want to talk about a man who is all over the place, what he would say.
The weird thing with Bathory is that they never toured because apparently Corthon just couldn't take it.
Yeah, he couldn't physically take it.
No. At least that's. She brings up a great point. I don't know how Mick Mars was able to play for as long as he did, because he was sick for the last probably 5-6 years of cruise life.
I can see where she's coming from a little bit. It's, not everyone's Mick Mars. I mean, some of us are more human than others, and some of us are a little bit less human than others. And I think it's safe to say guys like KK were more human, and Mick Mars was far, far less human.
He's just an alien.
Yeah.
Like even when he was healthy, he was an alien.
Oh yeah,
he was just totally all over. He was just out there.
He was totally an alien. Totally was.
You kind of have to be in Motley Crue.
Oh yeah, no, yeah. I think that's probably part of the, what's that word? The resume. It's all part of the resume. You gotta be. But I dig me some Bathory. I dig me some Merciful Fate, and I know Merciful Fate is playing Psycho Las Vegas this year. Ooh. I probably, sadly, won't be able to go because the timing on my end. Because I'm already going to do Maryland Death Fest with my girlfriend in 2 months, and I'm going to do the big Florida meetup in October, and I just can't do that many vacations.
I'm definitely going to try to be there for the Florida meetup because it'll be like I went to the one that was in Natick in October, and that was a great time, and that was just a local crowd, so I'd love to come down there and meet all you guys.
You should come, man. And then Courtney says for thrash, I like Voivod for Cat. I saw a Voivod in 2015, and they were kick ass. But as far as my favorite Canadian thrash metal band, I'm at to stick with Razor. I mean, Violent Restitution is such a sick fucking album, and Dave Carlo is a Riffosaurus Rex on it. And if you haven't listened to Violent Restitution or Shotgun Justice, which are both fantastic albums, you should. The artwork's very cheesy in Shotgun Justice, but I don't care because when you hear that shit, it makes you feel like you're getting cut by a razor. So look up Razor from Canada.
And there's a lot of great newer bands coming out of Canada now. Like probably my favorite out of the bunch is Unleash the Archers, where those guys are just fucking phenomenal power metal.
Yeah, it's coming out.
And that singer there is like, I can't believe how tiny she is and how loud she can get. It's like, but you're little.
No, we're in a really cool, I guess you could say, like a renaissance of sorts, where we got old bands still kicking ass in some ways more than ever than they did to begin with, and you got this wave of new bands coming out with the Night Demons and the Enforcers of the world. And this is a great time to be enjoying this, and everything is just now big giant choruses that are meant to be played at packed arenas and something you want to be chanting, blaring out of your car as you put your head out the window, screaming out loud. Like that's what I want to be doing when I'm listening to these albums, and I'm getting that feeling again.
Absolutely,
with heavy metal.
Like the tour that I'm going to see Actually, probably April 4th, so next week, really.
Mm-hmm.
Was supposed to be opening Sabaton.
Yes.
So Sabaton was supposed to open for them, and I can only imagine what a band like Sabaton has to have going through their head, or touring with a band like Judas Priest, because how many references are there in Sabaton songs to Priest? Hell, they straight up did a cover of Jawbreaker.
Yes.
And like, it almost feels like there was a recording I've seen of Queen playing Wembley Stadium in 2008 with parts of the Foo Fighters filling in.
Yeah.
And like the look on Dave's face is just priceless, because he's like, "Guys, it's Brian May." I'm on stage with Brian May.
Well, I would like to be on stage with him too.
But like, it's got to be an awesome feeling, like, for them to be like sharing a stage with guys they grew up listening to.
Oh, that's gotta be surreal, man. For real. Like, how do you like process all that?
I'm not only at the same venue as they are, I'm opening for them.
Yeah, that's got that type of feeling. It's one of those like you can't beat it type of feeling. And I see Courtney mention Wendy O. Williams we're doing Stand By Your Man. I thought that was Doro from Warlock, so maybe I'm wrong.
She does look a lot like her, actually.
Maybe I'm mistaken.
That is Wendy O. Williams, but
okay,
and
so it is Wendy.
That track is actually, well, that collaboration is pretty much why Fast Eddie left Motorhead.
Yeah, you're right. No, you're right.
For some reason, it caused some huge shit fit between him and Lemmy, and they never really sorted it out. And Fast Eddie ejected out of the band shortly after, which is too bad. Although we did get Fastway out of it, so it's not a complete loss.
No, it was not. Life always has a silver lining, and that was one of them.
And we also got to hear we got to hear Campbell and Wurzel as part of Motorhead for a long time.
We did, and now we got what's his face now in the Scorpions now.
Mickey D, yep.
Mickey D is in the Scorpions. They just put out a new album a month or two ago. I still been meaning to check it out, but I did hear the single. It was good. I heard the single. I really dug the single, and I'm like, I still need to listen to it in its entirety and absorb it.
Yeah, I listened to the single and a couple other tracks, and I like what I've heard.
Nice.
And it's incredible that the Scorpions are still going strong, because they've been around since what, 67? Like, they're
at the 60s,
and they're just still killing it. And I think they had a pretty long hiatus there in the 90s and 2000s, but they came back. And you want to talk about some of the brilliant artists they've had as part of that band. You have Michael Schenker, freaking Mickey D now, and a whole bunch of other guys that have rolled through that band. And it's just nonstop talent, especially Schenker. Holy shit, what a fucking artist.
So
he's basically the German Eddie Van Halen.
Oh, no, the dude is absolutely sick of a player. Schenker is, and I've seen him up close. I have a buddy who used to work for him because he has a touring band when he's not doing Scorpions called the Michael Schenker Group.
Yep.
So I have
all of their records too.
Yeah, it's the Schenker Group. I got to see Schenker on a lower level, that was really well to see, like that this god of a player, and here he is on stage in this tiny venue, like up close. For seeing that was really weird, because I'm like, dude, you're from the Scorpions. Holy shit, what are you doing here?
Well, originally he's from UFO.
Yes, he is.
And he's kind of one of those guys that, like Yngwie Malmsteen, where he kind of bounced between a couple of bands and then realized he doesn't work well with a band he doesn't control. So he kind of broke out into his own thing. And he's worked with some great singers as well. He just got Soto, the man who induces cringing in Razor every time he's mentioned. Joe Lynn Turner's worked with him. A whole bunch of guys.
Oh, yeah. I forgot about the Turner collab. Yeah, no. You're right, man. See, This is great. I can't I know for all the crazy shit that's going on in the world, but on the musical spectrum, it's definitely what a time to be alive.
Oh yeah, man.
And this is gonna be an exciting future to come, man. Holy shit, Rob! If you can last, even if we can get one more solid album out of Priest, that's just a bonus
And you know what? Even if we don't get that, if this is the last Priest album,
that we enjoy.
I can fucking live with that
Oh
because
yeah.
what an album to go out on.
Mm-hmm. No.
One of the best you've ever done. A 3-year tour that absolutely just destroyed arenas the world over.
Mm-hmm.
And you know what? If that's the way that this band goes out, I mean, like I did my first album review on Bad Magic by Motorhead.
Mm-hmm.
Again, it was kind of the epitome of everything they do well. And if that's how they have to go out, then you know what? That was that. Then that's a great way to send them off.
Mm-hmm. No, I wholeheartedly agree, and I can't complain because that's why even the thing with Saxon, we're so lucky that we got a great new album with Saxon, Accept as well, Priest, because they're at a point where they don't need to do this anymore. There doesn't need to
Oh
be
yeah, I mean, they could have quit 20 years ago.
Yeah,
And that's what I think that's part of the success and part of the reason they're still so good is if they were doing this for the money or the fame,
mm-hmm.
they could have hung it up 20 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
And they probably would have. You don't play heavy metal for 50 years unless you fucking love it.
Mm-hmm.
And I think they have that legit love for the genre and that legit drive to keep doing what they do. And I think that shows. Because a lot of bands, their later output, when they start phoning it in, you can tell.
Yeah. No, people go through the motions. It happens. And Courtney, I see your comment. Yeah, and it kind of works out that I've been able to grow I guess you could say, a following on my YouTube channel, and somehow it's translating to people wanting to tune into that aspect. And we got 70s growing as well. We're gonna get Metallicus and Imperius growing too.
That's why I started my channel. Is I noticed that like everybody's focusing on comics, movies, stuff like that. I'm like, you know what? There's a whole lot to talk about in the rock and metal community too, and I don't see a lot of it going on.
Mm-hmm.
So I kind of found that hole and jumped into it.
Oh yes, Courtney. I did a review a few weeks ago on my channel. If you like Motorhead and Venom, there's a band who put out a new album titled "Let There Be Witchery," and the band's name is Midnight. I'm going to be seeing them actually next Friday night, out in Chicago. But look up my Midnight review if you haven't watched it yet. Once again, Midnight's a kick-ass band. They've been at it for a while. It's basically a one-man band where Athanar does all the instruments, all the singing, and it's seriously straight up Motorhead, like riff-a-thon fun fest with the viciousness of like Venom lyrical content.
That sounds like exactly something I'd adore.
Oh, you would, trust me. I have the review up on my channel, so look into that review. And Amber, same thing. Look on my channel. I've never seen her before, so pleasure to meet you. Look into Midnight. Look into my review. You'll love Midnight. I absolutely am into all of their albums so far. They got 5 full lengths, and they got 10 splits, EPs, and compilations. They started doing the full length thing around the 2010 years, and they've been going all guns blazing since then. And this is their second one on Metal Blade, and they had one right before the lockdowns happened called Rebirth by Blasphemy as well. So check those out. Check out the review, but also check those albums out. Let There Be Witchery is the new one, and they're currently on tour opening for Mayhem. I will be at that show next week, Mayhem Midnight. Maybe I'll try to sneak a live video in there as a short. And it's gonna be a good time. And yeah, I'm definitely looking at posting some more music stuff as well. And I'm gonna do some of my movie controversy stuff. I'm gonna do that on Alt Tech, and I can try to make my YouTube version of this channel more comics and music focused. So what'd you say? Corey said, is that the same band? What's the same band? Midnight and Mayhem? No. Here, I'm gonna send the link to Pope, and then yep. Pope is gonna just show it off in the chat. So that's how we'll solve this issue here.
And as I say in the end of my videos every time, if you guys have something you guys want me to review or want to do it with me, like I said, I just set this up with these two, and we are going to do the Saxon review. That is going to happen. We need to work on time, and we were all really excited to do it. Unfortunately, some stuff happened last minute, so we will get to that. Other stuff that's going to be in the near future is the new Ghost record, which I'm a big fan of. And probably a couple other ones. We'll see what comes out in terms of new stuff. And if there's not anything that I'm really excited about, unless you guys have stuff you want me to do, I'll probably go back into some of my favorite albums, probably Screaming for Vengeance. Killers is definitely on my list. Do some of the classic metal stuff and just kind of a placeholder until we get more new stuff, because I do want to highlight the newer stuff that's coming out. Like I just did Sabaton's new record. I think it was my previous review, The War to End All Wars, which is fantastic. You should listen to it.
It's got some foreshadowing lyrical content on there too. That's what makes it weird.
Right? It's just like it's almost like spoiler alert. It's like, wait, this all happened 100 years ago. What the hell is a spoiler? We lived through it.
Oh yeah.
But no, I really dig the record. It feels like it's not like its own record. It feels like the back half of the Great War.
Yeah,
they're all written in a very similar style, and I couldn't like it any more than that for that reason. It feels like a complete unit, and one could do worse than a twin record. That's the Great War, which is probably their best record, and the War to End All Wars that's right there with it.
And they've been consistent too. That's another one that just constantly they put out albums. They know they have an audience there. They know what people want, and they kind of stick with their front end. There's nothing wrong with that. You don't have to reinvent the wheel every time.
They have a sound. They know they have an audience, and it's not like they're a young band anymore. Like they're headlining arenas in Europe. It's like over here they're kind of a smaller band, but that's because metal in general is kind of an underground genre over here these days, which is changing slowly. But it's not to the point where they're doing 100,000 person soccer arenas like they are overseas. Like that's one of my dreams, is one day to go to Wacken. And let's see, we got this in the private chat. Oh, there we go.
Well, I see Courtney's comment. Courtney, my brain has been like on brain fart mode all day, and I'm normally things I remember very well are not hitting me. And well, it just came back to me. Yes, it was from Ohio. I misread your comment, but yes, that's Athanar from Ohio.
And I will throw this down in the description here somewhere if I can get to that.
No, you're good.
If worst case scenario, I'll put it in the description of the video after we wrap up here. Because I don't know if I can edit it while we're live. Let's see if I can. No, that's not it. Sorry, I've never tried to do this before.
That's okay. Well, I'll tell you what, though. To our chat, we thank you for listening. This has been the episode of Reunion Era Judas Priest. So you all have a magical day. Check out my midnight review if you haven't. And make sure you come back next week when the Pope and that 70s rock fan talk about Saxon's Carpe Diem, the 23rd album.
That's absolutely mind blowing. They have 23 albums, and most of them are fucking fantastic too. It's not even like they produced a lot of shit there. But we will talk about that next time. I'm really excited to do that, and we were hoping to get it to you this week. Unfortunately, things happen, so we are going to do it. And I may do a gaming stream tonight. We'll see how I feel. This is my usual night to do my game stuff, but we will see about that. So thank you all for coming out. Nick, thank you for joining me. This has been fantastic. Way better than my normal, 10-minute rant, and then that's it.
The pleasure's mine, dude.
Absolutely, man. And like you say, this will be the first of many, many episodes we do on these. So thank you all for showing up, and I'll, as always, Stay healthy. Stay safe. I love you all. I'll catch you next
Goodbye,
time.
everyone. Have a great day.